Like a golf swing, there's so many ways something so simple as writing CLOs can go wrong. The final version of a CLO is approved by a program manager or a deputy head of department in learning and teaching. What do they check? Well, firstly, the alignment of the PLOs and the AQF, the assessment alignment with the CLOs, and finally, the CLO appropriateness and structure, so the verb, the content, and the context. On this last point, they're helping us to avoid the 11 traps of CLO writing. Let's rip through those traps now. Number 1, incorrect structure for the CLO. Here's an example. Describe the engineering use of the Newton laws of motion. A better example is to describe the Newtonian laws of motion used in civil engineering. Number 2, the CLO is ambiguous or not observable. Here's an example. Understand the principles of effective communication in the workplace. The verb understand is not a directly observable artifact, thus threatens the validity of your course's assessment. A better example would be to describe the principles of effective communication in the workplace. Here, we draw upon the revised Bloom's taxonomy for a more appropriate verb. A tip for finding those appropriate verbs is search online for Victoria University AQF Bloom's verbs. It's a fantastic resource. Number 3, the CLO is too generic or too specific. Here's an example. Explain renewable energy integration in the Australian electricity grid. Here, the CLO context has Australian electricity grid, which is too specific. These skills are international. This can be safely broadened to better reflect student capabilities. For example, explain renewable energy integration for grid-scale electrical networks. Number 4, CLOs overlap in scope. Here's an example. CLO, explain wind energy and integration in the Australian electricity grid, and CLO2, explain geothermal integration in the Australian electricity grid. These two CLOs overlap in scope. The impact is potentially distorting the scope of both learning materials and assessment. So a better example would be simply explain renewable energy integration for large-scale electricity grids. Number 5, the CLO is a task or an assessment, not an outcome. For example, calculate Newton's law of cooling. Statements like these are limiting and inflexible in the face of change. They don't actually reflect principles and abilities required to sustain a career. A better example would be utilize mathematical heat loss models in different materials and structures. Number 6, the statement has more than one CLO. An example, locate and critically analyze scientific literature and use this to inform the conduct and findings of a research project. Here the telltale is the word and. For this CLO trap, when multiple outcomes are packed into one statement, then there's a lack of clarity for the student. It opens the course design up to scope creep. Either rephrase or break it into separate CLOs. A better example would be conduct academic scientific research informed by currently critically reviewed scientific literature. Number 7, the CLO is not aligned with the AQF. If your CLO does not contain any keyword from the correct AQF level, it's more work to prove that it is aligned. Simply use keywords or similar language as the relevant AQF level. Number 8, the CLO has the incorrect AQF level. Example, recall the functions of a standard energy storage system. The example CLO language reflects an undergrad program, which is inappropriate for a master's degree program. It's actually quite closely related to the last trap, and this is simply about making sure you are drawing the keyword or phrase from the right AQF level. So roughly speaking, level 6 and 7 is for bachelors, level 8 is for honours or masters, and level 9 is for masters. Better is analyze the functional components of an advanced energy storage system. Number 9, the CLO is not aligned with the PLO. Like the AQF, if your CLO does not contain any keywords from the PLO, it's more work to prove that it is actually aligned. So simply use the keywords or similar language to the PLO mapping. Number 10, the CLOs miss the scope sweet spot. When the CLOs are outside the recommended 4 to 6, then there's potentially too much or too little learning scope or assessment for a 12 credit point course. It can be justified, but you have to work much harder. The suggestion is to restructure the CLOs, shift the emphasis to process rather than artifact. Finally, number 11. The CLO verb and assessment type are unaligned. In an example, the CLO, model digital twin systems in building services operation, and the assessment, multiple choice test quiz. In this example, the multiple choice quiz questions are unlikely to reflect the verb model. The inconsistency will call into question whether the CLOs are being properly assessed. It's a basic course quality measure for TEXA, and this is the more serious course design issue. Better, the CLO, model digital twin systems in building services operations, and the assessment is a video presentation. So, like a golf swing, there are so many ways something so simple as writing CLOs can go wrong. The key is to draft and redraft them. Do this until you feel the outcomes truly reflect the applied ability gained through studying your course. This becomes the basis for keeping your course content and assessment focused. You save time, you do less work, you create great learning experiences for your students.